I'm Andrew Medler, president of the Association for Library Service to Children, also known as ALSC. And it is my great, unbelievable thrill and honor to welcome all of you here tonight to this evening in Orlando. This is, to paraphrase Mr. Mallard in the 1942 Caldecott Medal-winning book, Make Way for Ducklings, the very place to spend the evening. Indeed, I cannot imagine anywhere better to be than here in this room with 1,000 friends and book lovers, where all are welcome. And together, all of us shall make mischief of one kind and another. It is now my honor and delight to welcome the president of the American Library Association. This is a friend and book lover who, among her many presidential duties and initiatives this past year, has shown us all how truly transformative and essential libraries are. Everyone, please put your hands together for Sari Feldman.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm so honored to be with you this evening. Before I was a librarian, I was a reader. I still am a reader, but I was a reader. And because I was a reader, I discovered a world of possibilities and opportunity. Despite my constant desire for books, I grew up in a community without a public library and with very limited school library resources. I came to the world of children's literature later in life as I pursued my master's degree in library science and began my career in libraries. There I was in Madison, Wisconsin, working hard to achieve my professional degree and visiting the Cooperative Children's Book Center, where I found a body of literature that was recognized by the Newbery and Caldecott committees. As I read through the decades of the best in children's literature and the most distinguished American picture books for children, I was in awe of the writers and illustrators creating brilliant stories and pictures for children to discover. I was also in awe of the librarians tasked with the daunting decisions of which books to receive honors and awards. Each year, the creativity and diversity of children's literature brings remarkable stories into the lives, homes, and schools of readers, future readers, and their families. So congratulations to all the winners of these awards. Thank you to the committee members who diligently reviewed and deliberated the choices that are honored here this evening. Thank you, librarians and library workers who ensure that the books are available for children on the shelves of school and public libraries. And thank each and every one of you for your ongoing effort to create readers and opening the doors of imagination for all children. Thank you.
Thank you. As devoted readers, I am certain, 100% certain, that most of us in this room read the acknowledgments at the end of books, right? You know, just in case we might recognize someone we know mentioned there. Well, please consider this now the acknowledgment portion of this evening, and I promise you, you will definitely recognize some folks that you know. I would like to start with introducing two important groups of people whose work this year has made ALSC the strong, healthy, and vibrant organization that it is. My hardworking, dedicated friends and colleagues on the 2015-16 ALSC Board of Directors and the ALSC staff that supports the board and members in all of our activities. We greatly appreciate all that you do. Thank you. I really love that so many of us have come together tonight. Among us in this room are past presidents of the association, publishers, editors, authors, illustrators, and vendors who are our partners, supporters, and friends. Thank you for being here and for your dedication, work, and friendship to ALSC. You make us who we are. ALSC appreciates the support and collaborative spirit that we share with our sister organizations, YALSA AASL, ALA Affiliate Reforma, I thought that might happen, and the American Library Association. We thank you for the work that you do to advance our common cause, which is excellent library service to all young people. ALA annual conference programs and events run so well due to the assistance of our dedicated local arrangements volunteers. Let's have a big hand for those volunteers. Thank you all so much. Please also join me in thanking Little Brown Books for Young Readers, a division of Hachette Book Group. And there are many reasons we thank them, but particularly for the creation of tonight's gorgeous program. Hold them up, hold up your programs. We also appreciate Weston Woods Studios, a division of Scholastic, who has continued its tradition of producing an audio souvenir of tonight's speeches. This year, in place of a CD, you might have noticed a card with a link on it. This link will take you to downloadable versions of this year's speeches. Weston Woods is working with ALSC to assist in building a digital archive of previous year's speeches, which will be available to everyone later this year. As 2016 marks ALSC's 75th anniversary, what a great way to enjoy our awards history together. So we are truly grateful for Weston Woods' generosity and curation of this digital treasure trove. This is also an opportunity to acknowledge other generous donors, many of whom are with us tonight. The official Friends of ALSC, and our colleagues in publishing and the corporate world who support the association through scholarships, grants, and funding for the Book and Media Awards and other literacy projects. A warm thank you to HarperCollins Children's Books for their donation in honor of Kevin Henkes tonight to the Frederick G. Melcher Scholarship, which encourages the professional development and engagement of future librarians in service to children. ALSC would especially like to thank Bob Seibert and Bound to Stay Bound Books for their sponsorship of the Monday Morning Awards Breakfast. And I know I will see all of you at 8 o'clock a.m. tomorrow for the ALSC Awards ceremony as we honor the recipients of the Seibert, Batchelder, Carnegie, Geisel Awards, followed by the ALSC membership meeting, where we'll recognize ALSC professional awards, grant recipients, and programs. And finally, we want to thank the wise and wonderful Vicki Ash for her thoughtful and considerate responses to every single question and concern as priority group consultant for all of ALSC award committees this year. And it is now my intense pleasure to introduce Rachel Payne, Chair of the 2016 Randolph-Caldecott Medal Selection Committee.
Tonight, we celebrate excellence in American picture books and recognize the winner of the 2016 Randolph-Caldecott Award and Honor Book awardees. As chair of the committee, I had the pleasure of working with a stellar group of people who read and deliberated with care, depth, and passion to select the most distinguished books of 2015. It was an honor to work with them, and I am delighted to introduce them to you now. Committee members, please stand when I call your name. And audience, please hold your applause until they are all standing. Lauren Anduri, Alan R. Bailey, Jill Bellamy. Sharon Deeds. Brian Fahy. Laura A. Given. Celia W. Jackson. Elise R. Katz. Karen A. McPherson. Nicole Powell. Tess Prendergast. Jennifer Ralston. Tessa Michelson-Schmidt. Sarah Bean Thompson. They're awesome. The Randolph-Caldecott Medal is awarded annually to the illustrator of the most distinguished book for children published in the United States in the preceding year. The 2016 Randolph-Caldecott Committee chose 4 honor books. In alphabetical order by title, they are Last Stop on Market Street. Illustrated by Christian Robinson. Written by Matt De La Pena. Published by G.P. Putnam Sons Books for Young Readers, an imprint of Penguin Young Readers Group. Edited by Jennifer Besser, Vice President and publisher of Putnam. Designed by Cecilia Young, Vice President and Art Director. Christian Robinson transports us, along with a young boy and his grandmother, on an unforgettable bus ride, celebrating the diversity, vibrancy, and beauty of the city. His illustrations, a vivid mix of acrylic paint and collage, feel both vintage and fresh, both accessible and transcendent. Christian, please come forward and accept the Caldecott Honor Citation for Last Stop on Market Street. Trombone Shorty. Illustrated by Brian Collier. Written by Troy Andrews. Published by Abrams Books for Young Readers, an imprint of Abrams, The Art of Books. Edited by Tamar Braces, editorial director. Art directed by Chad Beckerman, creative director. In paint and collage illustrations featuring rich reds, brassy yellows, and soulful blues, Brian Collier masterfully realizes Trombone Shorty's memoir of his early life in the New Orleans jazz music scene. Can art be pitch perfect? The answer here is a resounding yes. Brian, please come forward and accept the Caldecott Honor Citation for Trombone Shorty. Voice of Freedom, Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer, Spirit of the Civil Rights Movement. Illustrated by Aqua Holmes. Written by Carol Boston Weatherford. Published by Candlewick Press. Edited by Liz Bicknell, Executive Vice President, Executive Editorial Director, and Associate Publisher. Designed by Amy Berniker, Assistant Art Director. Aqua Holmes' exceptional artwork provides readers with an intensely visual encounter with civil rights icon Fannie Lou Hamer. And we viscerally feel the reader's struggles, her highs and lows. A repeated motif in vibrant yellow and gold pulsates throughout the richly layered collage to create complex images that truly capture Hamer's power and bravery. Aqua, please come forward and accept the Caldecott Honor Citation for Voice of Freedom. Waiting, written and illustrated by Kevin Hinckus. Published by Green Willow Books, an imprint of HarperCollins Publishers. Edited by Virginia Duncan, Vice President and Publisher of Green Willow Books. Designed by Paul Zachris, Art Director. In a windowsill world, 5 distinctive figurines relish the wonder of everyday moments. Using warm brown lines and a gentle palette, Kevin Hinckus has created a timeless tale destined to hold generations in delight and in anticipation. Kevin, please come forward and accept the Caldecott Honor Citation for Waiting. And now, the winner of the 2016 Randolph-Caldecott Medal for the most distinguished picture book for children is Sophie Blackall. For Finding Winnie, the true story of the world's most famous bear. Written by Lindsay Maddock. published by Little Brown and Company, a division of Hachette Book Group. Edited by Susan Rich, editor-at-large. Designed by Saho Fuji, art director, and Dave Kaplan, creative director. From the forests of Canada to the pages of the 100-Acre Wood, Finding Winnie is an incredible account of the friendship and love shared between a soldier and the real bear who inspired Winnie the Pooh. Beautifully interpreting this multidimensional story in her distinctive Chinese ink and watercolor art, Sophie Blackall paints intimate moments set against the sweeping arc of history with authenticity and heart. Whether she uses breathtaking double-page spreads or delicate sepia-toned vignettes, she captivates us all. Winnie's enchanting journey is a visual tour de force. I'm sorry, I lost a section. All right, I'm holding you all in suspense. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Sophie, it is my great honor on behalf of the 2016 Caldecott Committee to acknowledge your distinguished artistic achievement and to present you with the Randolph-Caldecott Medal for Finding Winnie, the true story of the world's most famous bear.
Oh goodness, I've got all my goods and chattels. There you are. There they are. I know you said you'd be here, but you're actually here, which is really, really lovely. All right, in the words of Kate DiCamillo, I wrote a speech. What about a story? Said Christopher Robin. What about a story? I said. Could you very sweetly tell Winnie the Pooh one? I suppose I could, I said. What sort of stories does he like? About himself, because he's that sort of bear. I am also that sort of bear, and I'm going to be telling you stories mostly about myself. 16 years ago, I won a green card in the lottery, which allowed me and my family to immigrate from Australia to America. When my green card was first issued, it listed my nationality as French Polynesian and my occupation as entertainer. The 9 months I had to wait for a replacement card were passed in fear of being discovered as a fraud on both fronts. I'm half waiting for someone to say apologetically that this whole Caldecott thing was a bureaucratic bungle. So I'm going to speak quickly. Thank you to the 2016 Caldecott Committee. Your collective expertise and years of preparation, the thousands of hours you spent poring over picture books, your dedication and commitment all give me faith that there was no bungle. And I am overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you for the work that you do to connect children with books that will change their lives, and for calling on a dark winter morning and changing mine. I will remember the sound of our mingled laughing and crying for as long as I live. Right, now on it's just gonna be all jokes. Thank you for finding Choosing Winnie and Last Stop on Market Street, and for choosing, did I say for finding Choosing Winnie? That was wrong. Thank you for choosing Finding Winnie and Last Stop on Market Street and Trombone Shorty and Voice of Freedom and Waiting. Christian, Brian, Aqua, Kevin, I am deeply honored to be in your company, and it is humbling to share the stage with Matt LaPena and Jerry Pinkney. I'm inspired every day by the work of my fellow writers and artists. I'm fortunate to live in Brooklyn, which has a disproportionate population of children's book makers, and even more fortunate to share a studio with some of the best of them. Brian Floca, Edward Hemingway, John Bemelmans Marciano, and Sergio Ruzzia. We share not only the physical space, a grimy loft in an old factory near the stagnant waters of the Gowanus Canal, but also our ups and downs, advice, and gossip. We share reference books, recipes, long nights, pen nibs, outrage, archives, painkillers, dark chocolate, sightings of our resident kestrel, and almost every day, lunch. I know my work is better for their company. I know Finding Winnie was better for their input. And I know how lucky I am. We were together when the awards were announced, and they are all here tonight, and I wouldn't be here without them. And I kind of want them to stand up. Would you stand up? Right? All right, enough about them. I understand that the committee must consider each book in isolation from an artist's previous books, but for me, they and their publishers are all connected. Chronicle, Henry Holt, FSG, Candlewick, Dutton, Athenaeum, Abrams, I know it's starting to get embarrassing, Workman, Putnam, Viking, Schwartz and Wade. Thank you for trusting me, for your encouragement and support and friendship. To every editor who ever took a chance on a new illustrator, in my case, Victoria Rock at Chronicle, you will always be our first love, and we will always be grateful. To everyone at Little Brown, thank you for gathering behind Finding Winnie like a tidal wave. It was a phenomenal effort from every department. Megan, Melanie, Saho, Dave, Jenny, Christina, Jessica, Danielle, and the inimitable Victoria Stapleton. This award belongs to all of us. All the same, I'm glad the medal has my name on it. When we were kids, my older brother, and you have the one, had a silver christening mug with his name on it. Even though he was no more christened than I was, we were both heathens. I had no such mug, and I may have mentioned this oversight once or 50 times to my mother when I was around 8 and seething with life's injustices. One day my mother, fed up, went to the local thrift store, came back with a christening mug, and plonked it down in front of me. "There," she said, triumphant. "Trevor," said the mug, in Edwardian script. I have this mug, and I had an idea that someone might put some wine in it for me. They have wine down there, and I'm going to give that to Matt. They'll pass it back to me. I'll have water in the meantime, so it's better for everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's lovely. It's not going to be that long, I promise you. I was completely, utterly satisfied with this mug. I embraced it wholeheartedly, but I often wondered what happened to Trevor. Cheers. Trevor marked the beginning with my obsession with old things, especially enigmatic things like an unfinished cross-stitch, Home Sweet or a porcelain doll with one hand-carved wooden arm. It's not so much the things, though I love the things, as the stories they hold, stories that connect us to the past. I forage for the stories of other people's treasures too, a dust bowl baby's shoe made from the skin of a rat, the last stick an old dog laid at his owner's feet, a father and son's dog tags thought lost, discovered entwined in a drawer. So you can imagine Lindsay Mattick's box of mementos made my heart skip a beat, a box of photographs and diaries, revealing piece by piece a profound friendship between her great-grandfather and the orphaned black bear he named Winnipeg, Winnie for short. I am so thankful to Lindsay for sharing her story. It was an honor to bring it to life. Winnie the Pooh was the first book I bought with my own money. It was an old, worn edition, a prop in my mother's antique shop. I read it in my secret spot under a table. I used to hide the book so nobody would buy it. Eventually, my mother sold it to me for $1, and I polished the steps to earn the money. I had never known a book like it, a book with interjections and digressions and ponderings, one that meandered and backtracked, that bounced and hummed, that drew you in so close you felt you were in the very forest itself, and at the same time allowed you to step back and see the actual form of a book, with characters so endearing you hated to leave them behind, so you didn't. I spent a year working on Finding Winnie. I travelled to England to rummage in the archives of the London Zoo, where I revelled in the daily occurrences, the zookeeper's handwritten record of comings and goings, in which I read that the day Winnie arrived it was foggy, a white-whiskered swine was unwell, and at 7 a.m. the temperature in the hippopotamus house was 54 degrees. At the War Museum, I learned that in World War I, Canadian soldiers were issued boots with cardboard soles which disintegrated in the mud of the Salisbury Plain, where it rained and rained and rained. And back in the studio, I had access to Brian Floker's considerable knowledge of locomotives. Thank goodness, because my train would otherwise have resembled a jumble of licorice. In a year which was uncommonly weighted with grief from the loss of a dear friend, Finding Winnie brought sweet distraction and great joy. One of the main reasons for the joy was working with Susan Rich. Susan introduced herself to me with a winning email. I had recently beseeched my wonderful and wise agent, Nancy Galt. Don't let me take on any more books right now. Seriously, even if I tell you this one is a find, remind me that I haven't had a weekend off in a year, that my children are withering from neglect, that I ought to be going to physical therapy. But in the face of such an email, Nancy's best efforts were a lost cause. I was a love-struck sailor hearing the sirens call. I once told my family I would sail off into the sunset with Susan Rich. They refer to her simply as Sunset. The thing about Susan, apart from her wit, genius, humanity, grace, and humour, is that she has a fantastic voice. I would answer the phone, and an hour later, we would have covered trim sizes and train journeys, soldiers and serendipity, beloved bedraggled toys, and contents of preschoolers' pockets. We solved problems and shared stories and navigated every twist and turn together on possibly the most delightful collaboration I have ever known. I had not yet heard her voice when I read that first email. I cannot now read it any other way.
Hello, Sophie. Susan Rich here with a manuscript for you to look at. This one, this story, I think, is a find. This is the sort of true story you can't believe you don't already know. Unless you already do know it. I find nonfiction thrilling when it shows us what almost wasn't. True stories that make us see that the world as we know it came to be when someone took a chance, made a choice. I'm not going to say much more about the story, but you will see it is full of wonderful things to bring to life. A sea of white tents at the army barracks, a parade of ships crossing the ocean in 1914, the London Zoo.
See what I mean? Yeah. Magic of technology. I felt a little bereft when I finally finished the book. I remember Susan and I dragged out our last conversation, ostensibly about whether the tiny graphic element on the spine should be a spot or a diamond, but it was really about our reluctance for this particular journey to be over. There's a curious lull while a book is being printed. Having raced feverishly to deadline, there are months before you actually hold the book in your hands. I took to carrying around the F&Gs of Finding Winnie like an expectant parent carries a sonogram print. One day I gave a presentation to a large and rowdy group of kids. I went all out. I explained how to make a picture book. I drew for them upside down with Chinese ink. I showed them whisks from 4 centuries and how you can paint with squished blackberries. I took them on a journey to densely crowded dirt floor classrooms in Congo and a school in Bhutan, halfway in the sky, where the student population is 5 and the commute is a 2-hour vertical climb. I told them what it felt like to watch kids in Rwanda open a book for the very first time and turn the pages and look at the pictures and make out the words, and how little children walked for miles to a hilltop where village elders told stories passed down through the ages. At the end, I opened it up to questions. A girl shot up her hand. "Can you tell us a story?" I said, "A story? After all that, you want a story?" "Yes," came the resounding cry. "Children are so demanding." Brian told me very carefully to number my pages, and I did. So I pulled up a tiny chair and took the F&Gs out of my bag and read Finding Winnie. You could have heard a pin drop. The principal came in halfway through and wiped a discreet tear. The teachers wept freely and reached for tissues in cavernous bags. I've read the finished book often since then, and almost every time I get to the end, a kid will ask, "Is Harry still alive?" Even though that they know the story took place over 100 years ago. And then immediately after, "Is Winnie still alive?" And they are crestfallen to hear she is not. Because somehow they know people get old and die, but they want bears to live forever. Occasionally I tell them that Winnie's skull is on display in London and her teeth are all rotten from the condensed milk, which is true and fascinating and slightly unsettling, like lots of the things I like. But usually we talk about our own stories, how we go about our lives, gathering stories from daily occurrences to tell our families over dinner, or collecting stories from our evenings to tell our studio mates at lunch, how our stories intertwine and overlap, how we are part of other people's stories as they are part of ours, no matter where we were born, who we are, or where we live. And how we pass those stories down through the ages, how long after our mementos, our dog tags or Trevor mugs are lost or left behind, the stories will remain. How sometimes we have to let one story end so another can begin, like when we move house or grow up or lose someone we love. But how we will always have those stories to revisit and reread within the pages of a book, wherever they go and whatever happens to them on the way. In that enchanted place at the top of a forest, a little boy and his bear will always be playing. Everything is connected. If I hadn't been bored out of my brain in my mother's antique shop, I wouldn't have resorted to a dusty book. If I hadn't encountered that book at that time, I would have been a very different child. If my mother hadn't kept me supplied with paper, I wouldn't have traced E.H. Shepard's drawings over and over again. If my father, to whom Finding Winnie is dedicated, hadn't devoted his life to books, I wouldn't have known what a good life it can be. If I hadn't won a green card in the lottery, I wouldn't be living in America. If certain cells had arranged themselves differently, I would have had other children, who I might not have liked at all, instead of Olive and Eggie, whom I love more than anything in the world. If I hadn't been dragged to a play, I wouldn't have met Ed, who brings me more joy even than Susan Rich. And I wouldn't have known his children, Jack and Beatrice, whom I adore. If I hadn't been addicted to stories of chance, I wouldn't have illustrated misconnections, and Susan would have sent someone else that seductive email. If Nancy Galt and Marietta Zacher hadn't been wonderful and wise agents, I wouldn't be here tonight. And if Harry hadn't got off the train to stretch his legs at a station in White River in 1914 and happened upon a bear cub, if he hadn't acted in a moment of daring, compassionate spontaneity, taken a chance, made a choice, Winnie the Pooh would not exist. To the 2016 Caldecott Committee, we are forever connected, you and I. You are my committee, and I am your medalist. To everybody I couldn't thank by name, you know who you are. Publishers, librarians, agents, educators, booksellers, writers, and illustrators. We are all connected by our love of books and the children who read them, and our profound belief in the power of stories to shape lives. And here, now, after the recent massacre in Orlando, we are connected in grief and outrage, in solidarity and love. We may never all be in the same room together again, but wherever we go and whatever happens to us along the way, I will remember you all and this enchanted evening and be grateful. Thank you.
Now, I am pleased to introduce Crystal Carr-Jeter, Chair of the 2016 Laura Ingalls Wilder Medal Selection Committee.
The 2016 Wilder Award Committee studied the award criteria, nominated authors and illustrators from all genres, contacted past Wilder chairs and committee members for practical advice. We received nominations from our colleagues, and we sifted through pages of worthy candidate entries. The process was challenging, since ours was the very first year that the Wilder Award would be given in each year. And yet, we found it exhilarating to evaluate some of the finest writing and illustrations in the field of children's literature. After careful review, we deliberated, and our committee chose to honor Pinckney's distinctive and illustrious and impactful career. Let me introduce the hardworking members of the 2016 Wilder Award Committee. I'd like to thank them sincerely for their support, their dedication, their expertise, and especially their commitment to task. Please hold your applause until they are all recognized. Maria Gentle, Kathleen T. Isaacs, Carolyn Phelan, and Martha Seif Simpson. I couldn't have done it without them. It is a personal privilege to stand before you tonight to present Jerry Pinckney, a distinguished author and illustrator, this prestigious and well-deserved honor for his substantial and lasting contribution for children. For more than 50 years, Pinckney has created engaging and enduring art published in more than 100 books. Now, while Pinckney's style is distinctive and often illuminates the African American experience, it's not limited solely to illustrating stories from a particular genre or tradition. His illustrations of tales from Aesop, the Bible, Grimm, and Anderson, oh my goodness, capture the humor and pathos of those classic stories. Pinckney's command of line, color, and composition, strength, and art demonstrates his classical training. But his work has a liveliness, a strength, and grace that cannot be taught. Pinckney grew up in Philadelphia in a closely knit community where storytelling was a natural part of life. His mother read classic stories aloud to him, and both his parents were encouraged his early love of drawing. He and his wife, Gloria Jean Pinckney, have 4 children, a number of grandchildren, and they can claim credit for inspiring an entire family of writers and illustrators who are skilled and award-winning in their own genres. Pinckney's artworks are always stunning, imaginative, masterful. Whether taking a timeless tale in a picture book, or a celebrated historical figure for a postage stamp, or a one-man exhibition of fine art in a gallery, Pinckney's impact is far-reaching. In 2014, the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art recognized him as the Artist of the Year. His artwork has also earned him several honorary degrees and many, many awards. In addition to his 5 Caldecott honors, 4 Coretta Scott King Illustrator honors, and 5 Coretta Scott King Book Awards, he received the Caldecott Medal in 2010 for The Lion and the Mouse. Who could forget the striking image of a lion's face on the wordless jacket of the cover? This was very inspiring. And this very morning, he received the 2016 Coretta Scott King Virginia Hamilton Life Achievement Award. Slow and steady wins the race. From The Tortoise and the Hare, 2013. And this speaks directly to what is unique about Pinckney's esteemed career. He has been deliberate, precise, and yes, steady, offering a consistently innovative footprint of excellence in his wake. He has created an outstanding collection of nameless books that speak to the heart and the longing in readers, young and old. Now, it is my great pleasure and honor to present the 2016 Laura Ingalls Wilder Award to my friend, Jerry Pinckney.
Crystal, that was beautiful. Now I just want to make sure I have the right speech. Congratulations, Sophie and Matt and all the other my fellow awardees this evening. With the Laura Ingalls Wilder Award, I was struck once again with the revelation that drawing changed the trajectory of my life. More than that, actually, drawing changed my life. I was born in 1939, smack in the middle of a family of 8, and in the middle of another turbulent era in American history. The country was still recovering from the Dust Bowl. The Great Depression was finally ending, and World War II was just beginning. All children were subjected to air raid drills during the school day, interrupting our studies with the presence of fear and the threat of menace. But no matter what was going on around me, I always found time to draw. In interviews, I'm often asked, how did you become the artist you are today? And many times, I'm invited to share drawing from my youth or a photograph of me as a kid in the act of making art. I always have to respond that, unfortunately, I have nothing to offer up. I have no sketches saved from those hours of sitting on the living room floor in the nook underneath the piano. No photos of my doodles my father allowed me to make on the wall next to my bed. I had no high school assignments tucked away in drawers, no prints from printmaking studio in Philadelphia Museum School of Art. had nothing to share from my early history of making pictures. Nothing that speaks to that passion. Why didn't I save any of that stuff? The simple reason is this: I never thought I would be an artist. Not a real one, anyway. So what would be the point of holding on to anything? Growing up in Philadelphia in the 1940s, I was very much aware of the racial separation. While segregation would not release its hold on the South and the North, Jim Crow tightened its grip. Our house was a dead-end block on a row with row homes with African-American neighbors who migrated from the South during the Great Depression and migration. But each day, as I took a left off Verlham Street towards my all-black elementary school, all-white neighborhoods and factories surrounded our community. In Philly, you didn't see those powerful degrading signs, whites only or colored only, that you experience in other parts of the country. It was more like an assigned role, a prescribed way of being. I lived out those days with the coding, you can and you can't. Art was definitely a can't. Not only were there no artists in my family, but in those early years, there were no models of such a career in my universe. I got the sense, echoed again and again, that a person of color should not consider art as a useful endeavor for the future. Instead, we were limited to the armed forces and trade labor. Though I initially accepted that construct, my drawing never stopped. If anything, the need and desire to create only increased. And I was fortunate to have mentors, strong arms lifting me up. My mother, who loved to read, always encouraged me to be true to myself. And my father, jack of all trades, who drew great satisfaction when working with his hands, hanging wallpaper and making over houses, brought home squares of leftover patterned paper from his job so I could sketch on the reverse side. My grandfather worked at the pencil factory located at the end of our block, so pencils were never in short supply. They were simple tools, but they were all I needed. Spending hours doodling on my own, I learned I could transform my environment through the act of making something. In creating, I could remake the world however I wanted. Later, as I became more dedicated to drawing, Dad provided me with my own sketchbook. And I took a pad and paper everywhere. Even to my job at 13, I'd been hired to sell newspaper at a stand located at a busy intersection of Germantown and Shelton Avenues. And in between barking, "Get your newspapers here," at passerbys, I drew and sketched people waiting on the corner for a trolley or bus, always working quickly so as not to lose a sale. But my boss, Mr. Matt Shaneberg, was always supportive. And when it was really slow, he didn't mind if I shaped that time with a longer, more focused piece. I would perch on the edge of my newsstand. I drew the display mannequins in the department store window on the corner, and that's how I met my first professional artist. I had a regular customer named John Liney, and one day when he saw me drawing, he asked if I would share my work with him. It was only after flipping through my sketchbook that he revealed that he, too, loved to draw, and that, in fact, his syndicated strip, Henry, ran in the newspapers that I was selling. Mr. Liney invited me to visit his studio nearby, and I often stopped by to see him at work. Could that be where the idea of many pictures telling a story was seeded for me? I always had teachers who stoked my artistic drive. Upon graduating from Roosevelt Junior High School, I elected to attend Dobbins Vocational School, where I would keep my creative flame burning, and I majored in commercial art. One of my mentors during that freshman and sophomore year was Mr. Sam Brown, a colorful and devoted teacher who was also African American. How uplifting that was for me to see a respected, successful man who came from a community and believed in my abilities. Besides teaching, Mr. Brown also ran a sign painting shop, and he hired me to work alongside of him after school and over the summer break. Now, keep in mind that I'm dyslexic, so I struggle with words from a young age. Picture this teacher employing a dyslexic kid to paint signs. Now, that's real support. Dobbins was also where I met Gloria Jean when we were magically partnered at a Valentine dance. That was the beginning of what would become a great partnership, the great partnership of my life. She encouraged me then, and all these years later, her support is still the rock that I lean on. However, not everyone had the same faith in my abilities. Back then, I had a different art teacher during the second half of the school year, a man who had always graded on a level playing field, giving fair grades based on talent and hard work instead of an A+. His big thing was to give A's with hand-drawn wings on each side, marks of excellence. In my senior year at Dobbins in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Board of Education announced it would award 3 scholarships to art majors from the city's competitive high schools. I thought I had a good shot. After all, I had received quite a few A's with wings. Certainly more than my fellow students, yet when it was time to apply for college scholarships, this teacher doled out the applications to only the white students. Though he believed I had talent and had held my work as a model, I understand now that this was a way of putting black students such as myself on notice to rethink the idea of art as a career. He wasn't alone. My father who had brought me my first sketchbook and had found ways to enroll me in art classes, joined the naysayers. He believed that when high school ended for me, so would my focus on art. In fairness, how was he to know that there was a future in art for his son when he was not aware of African Americans working in that field? But my father and my teacher were trying to spare me what they envisioned would be too tall a hurdle to clear, too hard a fall. It was that old misguided refrain, you can and you can't. This is not for you. I myself did not fully believe in my ability to succeed professionally in art, but I'm sure now knew how it made me feel, the act of making it. Art was my safe harbor, and the joy of making pictures centered and comforted me. It was the only thing I could imagine doing. I thought of those supporters whose hands had lifted me up. My mother, my boss, Matt Shangberg, the cartoonist John Liney, and my former teacher, Sam Brown. I carried their voices with me, spurring me on as I entered the guidance counselor's office. I left with the scholarship applications I had been denied, and then I made sure that all of our other black students in my class had them too. That year, Out of the 3 scholarships awarded, Dobbins received 2 of them. And I was granted a full scholarship to the art school of my choice. And you can believe it, my best friend, who was also African American, received the 2nd scholarship. After graduation, I found myself at the Philadelphia Museum School of Art. There I learned that art school wasn't about becoming an artist. I was already an artist. I just had to let it play itself out. Going forward, the making of art would be my only objective. The process is where I would live. Once I chose to burrow into the pursuit of the craft, that elusive art career came more naturally than I had imagined. 5 years after leaving the Philadelphia Museum School of Art, I was working for Barker Black Studio, an illustration and design house in Boston, Massachusetts. One of the projects that came into the studio for me was a picture book called The Adventures of Spider with Little Brown. I completed the drawings for the first dummy, and that was it. I was hooked. In creating picture books, a new world opened up. The book itself became my muse, a vessel that would hold all the joy and sadness of my growing up years, all the triumphs and tragedies. By using my personal history, the work became more layered, the drawings more meaningful. Art became the bridge that carried me from the past I wanted to escape from into the world I wanted to inhabit. My childhood was limited, but I learned that through my own creativity, the world was limitless. That first discovery was a long time ago. Since then, I have spent countless hours at my drawing board, and I can only imagine how many tubes of watercolor, brushes, pencils, and sheets of paper I have gone through. All have been key ingredients in a rich stew of visual storytelling. Be a folk tale, fairy tale, a Bible story, a fable, a poem, or a nonfiction piece, my intent has always been to awaken the emotional palate, to make viewers laugh, cry, ponder, and most of all, to feel compassion. And after 50 years of illustrating his books, it is incredibly meaningful to receive an award for what they tell me is making a lasting contribution to literature for children, while doing something I always needed to do for myself. All along, I was drawing my dream. Spending so many years working toward this dream has created a deep well of thank yous to my family first and foremost, especially my parents, Willie Mae and James. Though initially it was hard for my father to accept my career path, and he rarely asked about my work when he was alive. After he passed in 1999, I was surprised to hear my sisters recall how he had traveled, how he had raved about his successful son, the artist. I still credit him and my mother for planting those first seeds of creativity and drive in me. My deepest thanks to my wife, Gloria Jean, minister and author in her own right, who is my soulmate and cornerstone, for her love, encouragement, prayers, and spirited counsel over 56 years of marriage and even more and longer as best friends. And to my 4 children and 9 grandchildren and great-granddaughter, that great affection extends, of course, to my extended family who's here to welcome, who's here this evening. Welcome presence, their welcome presence had made my smile a little wider and my love of family even stronger. To all the mentors and special individuals who have championed me, who wanted and watered the seeds of my parents planted to help me to grow. My sincere gratitude. 2 years ago, I found out that my teacher, Sam Brown, the one with the sign painting business, had also been a watercolorist. In 2014, the Philadelphia Museum of Art acquired the jacket illustration for my Caldecott honor book, John Henry, for an exhibition called Represent 200 Years of African American Art. Imagine my surprise when I attended the opening and saw my high school teacher's painting displayed along the same wall as my own. As it turned out, Mr. Brown had been a respected and well-acknowledged painter in the 1930s, but had never shared this passion with me. Is it possible that Mr. Brown simply gave up, or that his own hurdles were too high? It makes me all the more grateful for the continued professional encouragement I have received throughout my career from the authors who have allowed me the opportunity to provide the visual storytelling and the visual storyline for their texts. And from my publishers who have given me so much greater freedom. Dial Books, with its rich history, has been a long-term home. And for my very first book, published in 1964, I've also had a steady and fruitful collaboration with Little Brown. Fortunately, that first book was just the beginning. And since those early days, I've worked on over 100 titles. I learned about the bookmaking and the craft of storytelling from three of the best and most dedicated citizens of children's literature: publisher and editor Phyllis Fogelman, art director Atha Tehorn, and publisher and editor David Ruther. My longtime editors, Andrea Spooner, Lori Hornick, and Ann Schwartz, along with art director Louis Malkin, also warrant special recognition for their diligence and attention over the years. In truth, there have been many, many, many people working together to make my books a reality. And each of those individuals deserve a shout out, but they are far too numerous to list here. For now, let me acknowledge all the editors and art directors and all the people who make up the production, marketing, and publishing, publicity, and sales teams that bring my efforts into being. My agent, Shelley Fogelman, for his guidance and friendship for the past 25 years. In order for me to be at my best, I need a sense of clarity in how to navigate every aspect of bookmaking management. And he has shepherded me in my career through all the twists and turns in the ever-shifting world of publishing. I would like to thank the American Library Association for this tremendous recognition and for the commendable work done by its members. Above all, these awards demonstrate continued commitment to putting books in the hands of young people, paving a way for the next generation of readers and thinkers who will change their world and impact ours. They will need our attention and support to find that vision, and the timing has never been more critical. We have our work cut out for us all of us. I'm saddened that we still have too many children waking up in a world where the odds are stacked against them, where they don't feel safe in their communities. This year I had the opportunity to visit with many elementary school students and witness some of the most dedicated and caring staff doing their best to meet the challenge of our time. Just recently I spent time with Matthew, a first grader who loved to draw. Since I was there presenting to the second grade and at his school, and Matthew wouldn't get the experience of my talk, a thoughtful instructional coach inviting him to share his art projects with me as I had lunch. Matthew comes from a difficult family, a difficult home life. and labeled as a troublemaker. I found him articulate, smart, talented, with an infectious smile. It was obvious he was using his art as refuge. Later, I sent Matthew a package containing some of my books along with drawing pads and pencils. But it was the instructor's attention that filled my heart with hope and optimism. Librarians and teachers have the most important job. In a sense, for kids like Matthew, they are the keeper of dreams, the dispensers of possibility. That was certainly true for me growing up. So too all the people who have supported me through years, who have opened my books and shared them with others. Thank you for your belief in me. It is you I have felt nudging me to always stay true to drawing my dream. Thank you.
You know, I still remember the very first time that I was this close to Jerry Pinkney, which was on an elevator in Columbus, Ohio, at a conference in the year 2000, and it is an even bigger thrill tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am now pleased to introduce Ernie Cox, chair of the 2016 John Newbery Award Selection Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Will you join me now for our last stop of the evening? An evening of cultural enlightenment, to be sure. Allow me to introduce you to people who I will consider VIPs for a long time, the members of the 2016 Newbery Committee. I do ask you to hold your enthusiastic applause and hoots and hollers and whatever you need to do to recognize them until I've called all of their names. My committee members, please stand as I call your names and remain standing until the full group has been announced. Eric Barbas, Sean S. Brommer, Allie Jane Bruce, Ty R. Burns, Amber Emery, Joan Kindig, Cheryl Lee, Karen R. Lemons, Penny S. Markey, Christine E. Shepper, Mary Schreiber, John P. Scott, Destiny Sutton, Joanna Ward. We thank you, the members and leaders of ALSC, for entrusting us with this work. The committee selected 3 honor books in an alphabetical order by title. They are Echo, Echo by Pam Munoz Ryan, published by Scholastic Press, an imprint of Scholastic Inc., and edited by the fearless Tracy Mack. 4 stories, 1 harmonica. The ethereal quality of a harmonica weaves together notes of hope in times of persecution, cruelty, and segregation. This original fairy tale intertwines with historical fiction to explore music and its power to save, heal, and set free. Pam Munoz-Ryan, please come forward to receive your Newbery Honor Citation for Echo. Roller Girl by Victoria Jameson. Published by Dial Books for Young Readers, an imprint of Penguin Young Readers, and edited by Kate Harrison. Full of doubts, questions, and disappointments, Astrid skates through the tumultuous summer before junior high. Quitting is not an option for this girl. Only jamming will do. Astrid falls in love with roller derby and learns how to be tougher, stronger, and fearless. Victoria Jameson, please come forward to receive your Newbery Honor Citation for Roller Girl. The War That Saved My Life. By Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, published by Dial Books for Young Readers, an imprint of Penguin Young Readers, edited by Jessica Garrison. Fleeing the sequestered life of their World War II London home, Ada and brother Jamie take refuge in a richly detailed English countryside. The temporary housing turns into a true home full of trust, love, and safety. Remarkably drawn characters and sparse language are outstanding components of this novel about courage, community, and conviction. Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, please come forward to receive your Newbery Honor Citation for The War That Saved My Life. The Last Stop on Market Street. Oh, I jumped ahead. Hold on. Don't rewind that. I missed part of my script. I've got to say what it is. The winner of the 2016 John Newbery Medal for the most distinguished contribution to children literature for children is The Last Stop on Market Street. As you may know, that book is by Matt De La Pena, with illustrations by someone else you've seen, Christian Robinson. Published by G.P. Putnam Sons Books for Young Readers, an imprint of Penguin Young Readers, and edited by the brave Jennifer Besser. CJ's journey with his Nana is not just a simple bus ride. It is a multi-sensory experience through which he discovers that beautiful music, nature, and people surround him. CJ's questions are familiar, and Nana answers him with gentle wisdom. Right up until their arrival at the last stop on Market Street, Nana guides CJ to become a better witness for what's beautiful. Through rhythm and rhyme, varied sentence structure, alliteration, and well-timed page turns. The story of CJ and his Nana is crafted to elicit questions, to spark imagination, and to make us laugh. Matt De La Pena, please come forward to accept your 2016 Newbery Medal for the last stop on Market Street.
Thank you. All right. I think that, there are people in our lives that help us so much. So I'm going to give this to my mom. Wow, came in soft. Okay. So, I've been to one of these before, and I was sitting at a table with authors, and Katie Camillo was giving the Newbery speech, and yeah, she's done a few of them, but, and I turned to the author next to me and I said, man, she's killing it. And he was like, yeah, she's killing it. And I said, I'm glad I never have to do this shit. So I want to warn the authors out there right now, just be careful what you're thinking right now. It's an honor to be recognized along with Pam, Victoria, and Kimberly. I just wanted to say that right off the front. And I also want to say, is Reforma in the house? Reforma has agreed that if anybody's mean to me during the speech, they will act as my bouncers. So I will just... Okay, I'm going to do the speech now. I had never known, never even imagined for a heartbeat that there might be a place for people like us. This is the last line of Dennis Johnson's short story collection, Jesus' Son. And it describes perfectly the way I felt way back in 2003 when I was informed that my first novel, Ball Don't Lie, was going to be published by Random House. And it describes the way I feel tonight, too, over a decade later, as I stand here among you all dressed up, fresh haircut, seated at the table. Growing up, I never could have imagined this. Me and books, reading, no way. I was a working class kid, a half Mexican hoop head. I spent all my after school hours playing ball down at the local pickup spot off Birmingham. I dreamed of pretty girls and finger rolls over outstretched hands. But age has a way of giving perspective. It turns out I was wrong. Turns out I've been a reader all along. Maybe I didn't have my nose in a novel, but I read my old man's long silences when the two of us sat in freeway traffic in his beat-up old VW Bug. I read the way he pulled himself out of bed at 3:30 every morning to get ready for work, and how he never took a sick day. I read my mom's endless worry about the bills, about the empty fridge, and I read the way she looked at me and my two little sisters like we were special, like we could make something of ourselves. I read the pickup politics at Muni Gym in Balboa Park, how the best players assumed a CEO-like power the second they laced up their kicks and called out to the crowd, check ball. And I read how these same men were stripped of this power as soon as the games died down and they set foot outside the gym, out of their domain and back into yours. I didn't read past page 27 of Catcher in the Rye, but I read Basketball Digest cover to cover every single month. I'd show up at my junior high library an hour before school, find an empty table and back, and tuck the latest issue inside the covers of the most highbrow book I could find. Usually some Russian novel with a grip of names I couldn't pronounce. Miss Frank, the warm, smiling librarian, would occasionally stroll past my table and say, "War and Peace, huh? How you liking that so far?" "Oh, it's great, miss," I'd tell her. "I really like all the wars and stuff, and then how it becomes peaceful." She'd grin and nod, and then move on to the next table. I'd grin too, marveling at my own slick ways. But then a few days later, she'd confuse the hell out of me by sliding across the table the latest issue of Basketball Digest with a wink. That's funny. That was funny. Back then, I never would have described myself as a reader, but Miss Frank knew better. And the truth is, I wasn't reading those magazines for stats or standings. I was reading to find out what certain players had to overcome to get where they were. I was in for the narrative. And what I found in some of the better articles wasn't that inferior to what I would later discover when I read War and Peace for Real. Over the past 10 years, I visited hundreds of schools and met with tens of thousands of young people. And so many of them are like that old version of me. Self-defined non-readers who spend all day reading the world. My mission as an author now is to help a few of them translate those skills to the written word. It didn't happen for me until college, when I was introduced to books like The Color Purple. Their eyes were watching God. 100 Years of Solitude, Drowned by Junot Diaz. When I finally fell for literature, I fell hard. But what if I can nudge a few of these kids toward the magic of books at a younger age? What if I can write a story that offers that tough, hoodied kid in the back of the auditorium a secret place to feel? I had never known, never even imagined for a heartbeat that there might be a place for people like us. Unfortunately, we don't always get that far. Sometimes we have to back up and address something much more basic and urgent. "Hey, mister," I've heard time and time again, usually at the poor schools, "why would you come here?" The subtext is obvious. This school is not worth your time. We are not worth your time. When I sat down to write Last Stop on Market Street, this troubling mindset was rattling around inside my brain. Nana, the wise grandma in the book, is urging CJ to see the beauty in his surroundings, yes. But she's also steering him towards something much more fundamental. She's teaching CJ to see himself as beautiful, to see himself as worthy. Sometimes when you're surrounded by dirt, CJ, you're a better witness for what's beautiful. And sometimes when you grow up outside of the American dream, you're in an ideal position to tell the truth. Here's the truth. We don't all operate under the same set of rules. Here's the truth. Our stories aren't all assigned the same value in the eyes of many decision makers. And what are we going to do about it? There was something else on my mind when I wrote Last Stop. Up to that point, I'd published a handful of literary urban novels that tackled race and class head-on. I was proud to see those books carve out a real presence in schools with diverse populations. But when I visited the more affluent schools, the private schools, my books were harder to find. Either they were set aside on the diverse books shelf, or they weren't there at all. This pissed me off. Oops. And why is it so common for me to see a class full of Mexican kids reading The Catcher in the Rye when I almost never see a class full of white kids reading Yaki Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass? Sometimes I'm part of the problem too, I will admit. A librarian once emailed me to ask me to be a guest at her school. And she said, "I'm so excited, Matt. You're going to be my Mexican author." Ooh, I love the gasp. And I was like thinking to myself, oh man, if she had really read my books, it's actually, a lot of them are about not feeling Mexican enough. And then her next email said, "We've just received a very generous grant from the district. We're prepared to offer you double your current honorarium." And I wrote back and I said, "Ma'am, I'm your Mexican author." A few years later, I had a much more troubling exchange. It was at a national conference like this. And a librarian came hustling up to me between events. And she introduced herself and she said, "I'm so glad I found you. I wanted to tell you I really like your books. Now listen, we don't have those kind of kids at our school, so we don't really carry that many of them, but I wanted you to know we really like your books." And I was like, "No, I totally understand what you're saying, ma'am. Just out of curiosity though, how many wizards do you have at your school?" Special shout out to Tim Federley for giving me those words, for arming me. With Last Stop, I set out to try something new. I wanted to write a book featuring diverse characters and a storyline that wasn't focused, at least overtly, on diversity. When I finished the 70-something draft of the text, I was proud of CJ's journey, both inside and out. And I was proud of the music of the language. But it wasn't until I saw the words transposed over Christian Robinson's soulful and whimsical art that I first wondered secretly, of course, very secretly, if we might have made something special. But I never imagined anything like the morning of January 11th. I was in Minneapolis that week, teaching at Hamline University with Prince winner Laura Ruby, by the way. Shout out to Laura Ruby. She's a badass, just so you know, she's a badass. I'd stayed up till 2:30 a.m. finishing up my next YA novel. It felt amazing to send the manuscript off to my editor. I could finally rest. Before I went to sleep, I set my phone next to the bed and turned on my ringer. There was a little buzz that Last Stop could possibly get some sort of a Caldecott recognition. Thank you. Over there. And I knew the committee wouldn't call me, but Christian and I share the same agent, Stephen Malk, and I thought, Steve's a good guy. He'd fill me in, so I'll leave my phone on. An hour later, the phone rang. It wasn't Steve. The man on the line said, "Hello, Matt. My name is Ernie Cox, and I'm calling on behalf of the John Newbery Committee. We have some news." I remember thinking, this guy must have been out late drinking. He said the wrong committee name. I remember also sitting up and pressing the phone closer against my ear. "Your book, Last Stop on Market Street," he went on, "has been awarded the 2016 John Newbery Medal." A chorus of committee members cheered behind him. At first, I was just really, really confused. And then I was overwhelmed. Before that morning, I hadn't cried since I was 13 years old. Sadly, this is not an exaggeration. My dad's a tough dad. But in the middle of that short conversation with Ernie Cox and the rest of the committee, the streak was broken. Big, fat tears rolled down my cheeks. Not because I felt happy, though I definitely felt happy, but because in that moment, it felt like I'd been forgiven for all my shortcomings as a writer. This job can be a lonely, lonely road, and it's not always easy to maintain self-belief. 99% of the time, the words don't seem quite good enough. 99% of the time, your characters don't seem quite real enough. Or worst of all, you don't feel quite talented enough. At the end of every single workday, I find myself muttering the same two sentences over and over. I should have accomplished more today. I should have been better. But on that morning, of January 11th, these people on the phone were telling me I'd done something good, something worthy. I couldn't speak for a long stretch of time. I was too busy trying to understand. "Matt," Ernie Cox said, "are you still there?" As soon as we hung up, I called my wife, Caroline. Caroline, I said. Caroline, I said in an even voice, "I have something to tell you." I paused for a long time trying to keep things in check because she couldn't hear that kind of stuff. "What?" she said. "Is everything okay?" "I think Last Stop just won the Newbery." She paused and said, "Wait, are you sure?" And I answered, "No." She fired up her iPad and went onto the ALA website and looked up, it's a true story, and looked up the 2016 award committees and asked, "Okay, was it a man or a woman on the phone?" And I said, "It was a man." And she said, "Holy shit." There are so many people I want to acknowledge. First and foremost, I want to thank Christian Robinson. Christian, could you just stand up real quick? Last Stop on Market Street is a picture book, and I've always believed that your brilliant illustrations are what make this book what it is. You're a special person, and your Nana, Lee Jenkins, is a special woman. I'm honored to be your friend and collaborator. Stephen Malk, my guy. I stand by what I told you back in January. You are the Steve Nash of children's books. Not only did you pair me with Christian, but you're the one who actually suggested I try picture books in the first place. I remember the first time you said it, I was like, this guy's crazy. I would never write a picture book. But it turns out that was a good idea. And Steve, you're like family to me. My editor, Jen Besser, thanks for taking a chance on this book and for fighting, most importantly, behind the scenes to keep CJ's dialogue authentic, for fighting to keep the music and poetries of the city intact. Cecilia Young and Lauren Donovan, thank you for being the very first champions of CJ's story. Cecilia, I'll never forget the 2-hour conversation we had back in LA, back when the book was nothing more than a single-spaced spoken word poem. Your heart is all over this book. And Lauren, you are a publicity magician. And I know about that stuff. You helped give this book a life way before any stickers were involved. To the entire Penguin School and Library Department, especially Carmela, Vanessa, and Mexican white girl Alexis. I can't begin to explain how much your support has meant to Christian and I over the past year. Thank you for all your hard work. And I just like hanging out with you guys. To Jen Logia, president and publisher of Penguin, and everyone else at Penguin who touched this book in any way, I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. A special thanks to my Random House family, especially my incredible editor, Krista Marino. You are the reason that I was allowed into, even allowed into the building tonight, because she published my first book back in 2005. Thank you for guiding all my YA stories. To all you librarians who work tirelessly to put good books into the hands of young people, thank you for your profound vision. In a time when some folks want to build walls, you give young people the tools to tear them down. Thank you for seeing me, and thank you for seeing all those kids who are sometimes labeled as non-readers or mess-ups. It may not look like it, but they're listening too. To my family, the De La Peñas, Mom, you're the reason by the way, take care of that medal. Mom, you're the reason I try hard at life. Thanks for letting me run every single draft of this book past you. Turns out your feedback was Newbery medal worthy. Dad, thanks for teaching me the world. I've told the story of your late turn toward literature a bunch of times, but I've never told anyone this. I drew on your quiet wisdom for every last word of Nana's dialogue. Caroline, my wife, my best friend, I see you. I've been on the road a lot these last couple years, and when I've been home, I've been on deadline. You've been supportive through it all, even though you have a full-time job and you have a full-time kid. I see you, and I love you. And there's nothing I'm more proud of than the life we're building together. To my 2-year-old daughter, Luna, who's back in our hotel room right now, sleeping, in theory. Thank you, Luna, for giving me incredible joy and making my heart beat with a purpose. And I also wanted to thank everybody who's received an award this week. Not just the people here tonight, but all the awards that have been given out this week. I saw the CSK breakfast this morning, and it was just incredible. It was one of the most moving experiences I've had in books. A special thanks to the We Need Diverse Books people and SCBWI. I'm proud to be on the board of both, and you guys are doing incredible work. And finally, to the 2016 John Newbery Committee, I'm humbled beyond words by this mind-blowing honor. What makes me especially proud is thinking of all the underrepresented readers out there who desperately need to see themselves in books, even though they don't know it. I need to tell you about 2 of them right now. The first is a girl I met at a really rough high school in Newark, New Jersey. An organization called My Very Own Library donated 100 of my books to students, and at the end of the presentation, the kids got in line to have them signed. One African-American girl, frizzy braids, dirty jeans, messed up teeth like mine, took her signed copy and looked at it, and then looked at me and said, "Ain't you gonna ask for my autograph, mister?" Her girls laughed and laughed and laughed, and one of them said, "Now why is he gonna want your autograph, dum-dum? You aren't famous." Normally I would have laughed right along with them, but I saw her face. Instead, I handed this girl my Sharpie and held out the inside of my forearm and told her, "Hell yeah, I want your autograph. I don't have paper, so why don't you sign it right here on my skin?" Because maybe this is the kind of audacity it takes to be someone when you come from nothing. And maybe this is the kind of audacity we need in the book world in order to finally give young people hero choices that reflect our current population. And finally, by the way, this clapping makes me feel like Obama. It's amazing. And finally, I want to tell you about a kid I met in Virginia last year. I just presented to his entire elementary school in the auditorium. I read Last Stop. I told a few secrets about the book. But before I said goodbye, I explained that I wanted to give away my own copy of the book. The whole time I was talking, I told him, "I've been watching you. And there's this one kid I've decided I need to give the book to." I walked up into the crowd and handed it to a boy who was sitting sort of off on his own. He took the book and everyone clapped, and I said goodbye. As I was leaving the school about 15 minutes later, a few kids came and gathered around me. They wanted to talk, as the kids sometimes do. And suddenly the boy I'd given the book to appeared. He was still clutching it in his hands. "Hey, mister," he said in a quiet voice, "why'd you give it to me?" I shrugged and told him, I'm not exactly sure, but I think there might be something special in you. I can feel it. And then something powerful happened. He began to cry. And the other kids rubbed his shoulders and patted him on the back. And someone told me, he just moved here. He's new. I watched this for a while, how everyone was gathered around him, how they held him up and smiled at him. For a brief second, our eyes met, me and this kid, and I knew something important was happening. On my flight home, I kept thinking about that boy and his tears and how tightly he was holding onto the book and how his classmates made him feel their presence. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was significant. Then in January, you committee members called and told me about the Newbery, and I became that boy. I got emotional, and questions flooded my head. Why had you picked me? Did I deserve it? Am I worthy? And then so many of my fellow writers and illustrators reached out after the news was announced and rubbed my shoulders and patted me on the back and told me how happy they were. For several months, I have tried to process what has happened, but I finally realized I will never truly understand what this means. It will forever be a beautiful mystery, a significant one. I had never known, never even imagined for a heartbeat that there might be a place for people like us. Thank you.